All right, welcome everybody to the Lakers Legacy Podcast. Where lucky number 7? How about Luka number 77? Because we just hit the jackpot. So don't blink or you'll miss it. This is the greatest show in town. Lake Show, Luka Show. We are finally here. I'm your host, Jonathan Hernandez, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tommy Alexander. And Tommy, Luka Doncic, Los Angeles Lakers shooting guard. It's real. Luka Magic is here. What were you feeling last night, and where does this rank in your pantheon of most excited, anticipatory Lakers debuts?
This has got to be, in the top three, definitely. I'm trying to think of like maybe the last. Certainly LeBron's first game is up there. Pau Gasol, because that was a midseason trade that was equally, well, not equally. It wasn't that nothing is as surprising as the Luka trade, but in the same realm of surprise, I guess, as the Luka trade. But yeah, no, this one was up there. It was very, very exciting, lots of anticipation. The guys all seemed like extra amped up, including Luca, who himself admitted like he didn't remember the last time he was nervous before a basketball game, but
Yeah.
he clearly was had a little bit of jitters in the beginning. And people forget, right now it wasn't just his first game with us; it was his first game after 7+ weeks off. Dealing with this injury. So he was still like not just adjusting to the new circumstance, but also adjusting to
Mhm.
playing basketball again at all.
No, yeah, for sure. I think I would put it in my top 5 for sure. I think I would have the Pau Gasol one, number one, just because of the context of the season. We were really going for it and we kind of knew exactly what we needed. And Pau Gasol was literally the everything that we could have asked for that season with Andrew Bynum going down and maybe even a better fit than Bynum offensively, right? So, but yeah, Luka's definitely up there. Surprisingly, I also very vividly remember when I was super hyped to see Dwight Howard in a Lakers jersey for the very first time. It obviously didn't end up working out, but I just remember like that being such a momentous occasion. Obviously LeBron James, obviously Anthony Davis, and I think the Luka Doncic debut is up there just because it's been so unexpected and abrupt, and we could not have foreseen any of this coming literally just a week and a half ago when all of this went down. And then you fast forward a week, Tommy. What if I had told you, let's say you got into a coma like right
Ugh.
before, like 2 Saturdays ago, and then you woke up and I was like, hey, turn on your TV, and you saw a bunch of Luka Doncic jerseys on every seat at Crypto? What would you have thought?
I would have thought I was dead, and this was all in my imagination.
Well, 77th heaven. So, Luka Doncic only played 24 minutes last night, and we're going to get into how this Lakers team as a whole has looked because they have been literally the hottest team in the NBA in the last 10 to 14 games. They are 9-1 in their last 10 games, which is the best win pace over the last 10 of any other NBA team. They have been playing tremendous defensively. They have been outscoring teams in the last, let's see, in the last 10 games. They are also fifth in scoring. They're averaging 121 points per game. And this is all happening in the midst of such a strange shake-up interim period that you're not exactly sure what to make up. You're not exactly sure what to make of the Lakers because of this monumental shift in their lineup and adding Luka Doncic, losing Max Christie and Anthony Davis, adding Mark Williams, and then not adding Mark Williams, which we'll also talk about in this episode. Um, but having said that, Luka comes in last night, and obviously we're playing like a pretty bad Utah Jazz team, although they have had wins against, the Golden State Warriors and some other playoff hopefuls, and they pretty much had their full squad healthy. Like Walker Kessler was playing, Laurie Markkinen was playing, even Jordan Clarkson was there. I think they were only missing Colin Sexton. But having said that, Luka Doncic comes in and he pretty much just seamlessly fits in. 14 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. The efficiency wasn't there, was only 5 of 14 from the field, 1 of 7 from three. In terms of getting a pretty tantalizing and titillating like snapshot of what we can expect from Luka, I felt like he delivered on all fronts, and particularly from the passing, playmaking, and vision standpoint. I mean, the first two plays were a LeBron James alley oop to Jackson Hayes, and then a Luka Doncic alley oop to Jackson Hayes, and it felt like we never came down from there with regards to just feeding our big men, feeding our forwards, and just attacking the rim off of LeBron and Luka's and Austin Reeves' vision. But yeah, what were your thoughts on Luka Doncic's Lakers debut?
So I think it's going to take some time to figure out exactly how all the pieces fit. But the immediate reaction is it feels like for 48 minutes, we should have LeBron James effectively, as a LeBron James playmaking talent on the court for all 48 minutes of a game. It it's going to be very overwhelming, I think, for teams. And I think, we've seen JJ's offense and the types of plays that he's sort of implemented and how Luka fits into those. And I think you saw a little bit more. I think the first half was just let's go out and everybody sort of get their legs under them. I think the second half you saw a little bit more deliberate. Okay, let's have Luka initiate a few plays and let's run some three-man actions where there's some combination of LeBron, Luka, and Austin
Mm-hmm.
involved in a high pick and roll. And then the one who's not involved in the pick and roll like flashes to the top of the key to catch a pass if there's like a strong closeout or like a blitz on the ball handler. When we get into that situation and the guy catching the ball is and not this is not a knock on Jared Vanderbilt, who for his size is like a pretty good playmaker, I'd say, and can do things with the ball in his hands, and not a knock on Rui Hachimura, but it's not Jackson Hayes, Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, DFS catching the ball there in the center of the right at the top of the key to either attack the paint or make a play. It's going to be one of those three guys like LeBron, Luka, or Austin. And when any of those guys catch the pass in space, it's just going to be impossible to defend. I mean, honestly, I
Mm-hmm.
people were joking on Twitter after the game, like the NBA is going to outlaw this play because it's going to be like actually impossible for teams to defend. But I it really is. It's
It's
going to
our
cause
tush
so
push.
much. Yeah, it's like it's our equivalent of the tush push, right? It's going to cause so many issues for teams defensively that frankly, I don't know how you guard it. I mean, we saw variations of it that led to direct scores in the paint from one of those three guys, and another one that led to a kick out for a wide open Rui three in the second half. And it's just like that's going to be there every single time. And so yeah, it's going to put so much pressure on opposing defenses. And this is just
Mm-hmm.
the tip of the iceberg with these three guys. I mean, we've got 30 games left for these guys to continue to develop chemistry with each other. And two of the three are arguably, two of the best playmakers of all time. Luka obviously has a ways to go in his career, but you kind of saw, again, just Luka has this like kind of tendency to just make simple passes even look elite. I mean, he had like a no look pass in the first half to first quarter, I think, to Rui in the corner for a three. And it's just a simple no look pass, but the way that he looks defenders off and fires this pass with like perfect precision right into the shooting pocket. It's like disarming and alarming when you watch it, because the only other player we've ever seen do that in a Laker uniform is LeBron consistently. And now
Mm-hmm.
we've got this other guy who's doing LeBron stuff with the ball in his hands, and it's pretty jarring. And then you see like not just the excitement and energy level from LeBron rising, but you also see like kind of glimpses of how the addition of Luka is going to trickle down on like
Oh
everybody
yeah.
else's energy and engagement level. Like LeBron looks so much more engaged defensively and engaged in doing the little things, and kind of same with Austin. And I also really like that both of those guys. I mean, like with LeBron, you don't have to worry about it. But one thing I actually really liked was Austin's aggressiveness continuing.
Mhm.
Notwithstanding the fact that he's playing with two ball dominant Hall of Famers now. So yeah, it just like it was a really good first sign. I mean, like, yes, Utah is not a good team. We'll need some reps against good teams. That's not going to come till post All-Star break, because we play Utah again in tomorrow or whatever. So I we'll have to see. But yeah, to your point, I mean, the Utah team did beat Golden State. They were up on the Clippers by double digits in the second half while resting a lot of their starters. They're not a good team. They're have talent deficiencies, but they're well coached and they're a real NBA team. And I mean,
Mhm.
we just demolished them. So
Yeah,
it didn't even look like they had a chance. So
132 points. It's crazy. And yeah, this is Luka just getting himself back into shape after nearly, I don't know, a month and a half or something. And I will say, Luka's not fat, but he could get in better shape. That's all I'll say, but it's crazy that he is this exceptional on all levels, being sort of out of shape, coming back from injury and understanding that he could stand to lose some weight, get a little bit more cut, and I know he will. But even like defensively last night, it already seemed like he was bought into the program. He was doing his little Marc Gasol, being in the right positions defense, and this dude is so strong and physical that guys can't move him around. So if he actually just steps in the right place defensively, that's a good defensive possession for Luka. He was trying to draw
yeah,
a couple charges, and then he does the Marc Gasol thing where he smartly knows how to swipe down and strip the ball from defenders. And so even from a defensive standpoint, I'm like, okay, we got fat Luka playing defense right now. What's going to happen if he even loses 10 pounds from here? So
yeah, and it's something to work with, right? I think that's the thing about Lucas' defense. He's never going to be the guy you want to throw out on an island. Um, but I think prior to the trade was averaging 2 steals a game. He always gets his hands on a lot of balls. He's like a smart player, and can, like, to your
Ayo.
point, he has, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. I just said Ayo. You said he
Gotcha.
gets his
Gets his
hands on a
hands on
lot
a
of
lot of
balls.
balls. It took me a second. And he uses his basketball IQ, which is a thing we've seen with, your Steph Currys and your players who are not necessarily known as being great defenders, but they have high IQ and can get themselves in the right position. So, look, I think one thing too on Lucas conditioning is folks are sort of going to have to calibrate themselves to what this guy looks like. This is kind of what he looks like, and that's okay. It works. It's effective for him. No one, I don't see a bunch of Denver Nuggets fans complaining about Jokic needs to run faster. He, the thing that's impressive about Luka is this is how he's played since he was 20. It's not like he was playing at a faster speed 4 years ago. He always
I
plays
don't know.
like
He looks
this.
he looks he looks pretty different his rookie year. I will say that. He was like super slim and he was like dunking on people. I'm not asking him to go back to that level, but like yeah.
His rookie year, it was also his worst statistical year. But my point is, like, since he's been the Luka that we know, he's largely looked like this. Could he lose a few pounds? Maybe. But it he's like, you're not getting a guy who's going to go out there and be LeBron James in his prime athletically. And so the thing that's going to be, I think, something a little bit difficult for people to wrap their heads around is this is just kind of who this guy is. And he puts up these stats and is this effective, notwithstanding what it looks like visually. He,
Yeah, that's
you know, it just like this is who he is. Like he's not going to be the guy sprinting down the floor. And I'm not even talking about defense. I'm talking even on offense. Like he does this like arms by his side, like fake jog thing. Like that's just how he plays. I mean, he's always kind of been like that. And
yeah.
and that's how he conserves energy through the games. And we'll have to see if he can buy into the systems that we're sort of running, and he can see how those systems will take some of the strain off of his body, then maybe he'll realize, okay, well, maybe I have more to exert here and there. And so, all things that I'm sort of excited to see how they develop over the course of the year.
Yeah, that's why I liken him to Kung Fu Panda. It was like kind of a jab and a joke, but it's true. It's like you don't expect somebody who looks like that to absolutely surgically destroy your entire team with the flip of a finger, skadoosh. And yeah, he looks like some dude at the Y that just comes in and like the game is going so slow for him. It's like the Matrix. And so, yeah, Luka Doncic. The other thing too that was stood out to me was just our grab and go ability in
Oh yeah.
transition now has just been amplified to the nth degree because Luca gets rebounds. He rebounds pretty well, but like to have him grab the ball for himself and then look all the way down, and whether it's like that full court outlet pass, pinpoint pass to LeBron James, or him just taking the ball down off his own dribble himself and having his head up looking every which way for open players. I mean, it's such a game changer, and it allows us to keep our pace high, allows us to continue to rack up the points in bunches, and keeps us just such an offensively potent team where we can actually utilize LeBron James' athleticism, even still at 40, Rui Hachimura's athleticism, DFS, Jared Vanderbilt, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one thing that stood out to me, as well as the fact that in a lot of the sets that we were running in the second half, it was both kind of sad and nostalgic for me, but also kind of like game changery for me when I actually thought about it. But Luka Doncic in those horn sets or those Spain pick and roll sets was kind of assuming the Anthony Davis role at the top of the key. And I
Yeah.
was like, shoot, that's crazy that he is Anthony Davis. And I love Anthony Davis, but he is not a generational playmaker in the likes of Luka Doncic. So yeah, great first debut for Luka Doncic, and the best is literally yet to come. All right, so why don't we take it to break here? After the break, let's talk about the team as a whole, who stood out to us, and then talk a little bit of Mark Williams because he is no longer a Laker, but Alex Len is. It's crazy. But before we take it to break, let's quickly talk about our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Because with the basketball season rounding the corner, if you want to win up to 1,000 times your money, make sure to do so with Underdog. Underdog Fantasy has got all of your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all basketball picks or mix and match across other sports. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into $1,000 just with your hoops knowledge. So this week on Underdog, I am looking at the Lakers Jazz game tomorrow, and I'm going to take the higher on whatever Luka Doncic's assist prop is. I'm actually not sure if he's playing. He's questionable right now, but I hope they allow him to play. He only had 4 assists last night, but I think that was clearly just a feeling out period for him and his teammates. If Doncic's line is at 5.5 assists, take the higher. I think he'll hit that before All-Star weekend as his teammates get more and more used to how open they're going to be. So what are you waiting for? Download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code LEGACY to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with promo code LEGACY and claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All right, let's pitch it to our sponsors and we'll catch you guys after the break. All right, so we are back. In the Lakers' last 14 games, they have a 12-2 record, which is best in the NBA. They are second in the NBA in net rating. They are third in the NBA in defensive rating, second in the NBA in effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage. They are first in the NBA in opponent field goal percentage. They
It's
are
crazy.
first in the NBA in opponent rebounds, and they are second in the NBA in opponent points per game given up. So, how is this all happening during so it's
I
weird,
don't,
right?
nobody
Because
has
the
a good
first
explanation, dude. It's like it makes no sense.
it makes no sense because the first 8 games out of these 14, we were under the assumption that this was an Anthony Davis, LeBron James led team, right?
Right.
And the last 4 or 6 games, it's like, oh, I guess we're a Luka Doncic led team now. And I just really quickly want to give props to JJ Redick
Oh
and the
yeah.
coaching staff and all of the players that remained actually for. I mean, you want to talk about holding it down? Like, this was an emotional trade to wrap your head around. And the fact that these guys were able to not only remain professional, but actually channel that like angsty energy or that those weird feelings into productive NBA play is nothing short of amazing. And I love to, and I'm so glad that we already did our post NBA trade deadline episode, but I'm going to reiterate what I said there. But I am so glad that we kept Rui Hachimura,
Yeah.
especially now seeing that we had ended up trading Anthony Davis and didn't get a Mark Williams center back in return. And I'm also so glad that we kept Gabe Vincent. And I do think that Rob Pelinka deserves credit for not just throwing those guys away for every Lakers fan's flavor of the week, mid flavor of the week. Nikola Vucevic, Jonas Valanciunas, Davion Mitchell, which, that was intriguing. But you want a guy like Gabe Vincent, who's a professional, he's a veteran, he's been there. And now we're seeing all those guys pay dividends. And what's crazy is, Tommy, there is not one role player who's been getting consistent minutes on the Lakers in the last, I don't know, 5 or 7 games that I can say has been underperforming. Maybe Shake Milton, but he's not even really getting consistent minutes. He's been
Right.
playing when like Gabe Vincent's been out, right? So like Austin Reeves has been phenomenal. Jackson Hayes, Rui Hachimura, Gabe Vincent, DFS, Jared Vanderbilt. Jared Vanderbilt's averaging 6.4 rebounds a game, by the way, in just like 14 minutes,
Yeah.
or maybe even less than that. And then even a guy like Jordan Goodwin, who's on a two-way, like literally everyone who has gotten meaningful minutes for the Lakers has played exceptionally well in the last 5 or 7 games. And this is the first time, or one of the first times that I can say, like, oh, this is what your role players firing on all cylinders look like. I'm gonna try and brace myself because there's no way this can last. So I'll just lap it up in the meantime. But I do think a large part of this stems from just having this versatile crop of strong, lanky, lengthy forwards, so that even when you bring a guy like Luka in, it's almost like perfect fertile ground for him to fit in because now he's flanked by Jared Vanderbilt, Rui Hachimura, Dorian Finney-Smith, and then Jackson Hayes has played some of his best basketball recently as well, and Luka's only re-energized him, So what have your thoughts been on, the team in general and any players you want to obviously highlight? Austin Reeves goes without stating. I don't want to underplay the 45 points, career
Yeah.
high
That was an
45
insane
points against the
game.
Pacers, 45, 7, and 7. I'll admit it, I was wrong on my cap projections of Austin Reeves' ceiling. I think he could, I don't know how much better he can be from here because this is pretty much an all-star level player at
Yeah.
20 points and, 7 assists on a nightly basis. Those numbers are obviously going to go down with Luka Doncic taking up usage. But in terms of, I was of the mindset that Austin Reeves, he's an okay third guy on a team, but championship wise, I don't know if that's going to work. If he's the fourth guy, he's amazing. But now I'm kind of like, I don't know, maybe he is a really good third option after all. But yeah, your thoughts on the team in general and anyone you want to pinpoint.
So I'll start at the top. JJ Redick deserves just insane amounts of credit for how this season has turned around. We obviously got off to a 3-0 start against, I think, all three playoff teams. Like, I don't recall off the top of my
Mm-hmm.
head. Um, and that was like, made us a little optimistic and enthusiastic and highlighted, okay, these are the differences between, JJ and Darvin, and we look organized, we look together, and it's just, the first week of the season. We went not that long after that through like a 10-13 stretch. There was adversity. We were getting blown out in the losses. We were barely winning in the wins. We were famously, until like the last week, the only top 10 team in the West that had a negative plus minus point differential on the season. Which again highlighted the fact that when we lost, we were getting just absolutely destroyed and quitting, right? And when we won, it was like everything went exactly right and we would barely beat Utah by 1 point at home. Things like that, right? Like it took Will Hardy sabotaging his own team for us to beat Utah by one. On that play where he called a timeout. Things like that, right? So I think I think JJ gets a ton of credit. And I think, it's not just necessarily X's and O's on the floor. It's also things like JJ never quit on Gabe Vincent through all of his ups and downs. He always carved out, maybe his minutes went slightly down, but he always carved out some time for Gabe Vincent to, stay in a rhythm. Early in the season, I think, and for periods in that 10 and 13 stretch, Dalton Connect really struggled and JJ always stuck with him. Rui
Mhm.
has had ups and downs with his rebounding and defense, and JJ stuck with him. And so, like, we said for the D'Lo pre-trade, JJ stuck with him. He moved him to the bench at some point, but still stuck with him. So, you know, I Max Christie again pre-trade. So
Mhm.
there's so many examples of this, right? And all these guys turned it around. And as fans, I think it's really easy to get impatient. I mean, we got impatient definitely on this podcast about, oh, well, this person needs to be cut out and we got to ship this person out for a bag of chips and whatever. And on the other hand, we complained for the last 2 years about how like you just have to play your good players and things will work itself out. And so JJ did that. He listened to our pod in the last couple of years and didn't listen to us this year because he was busy coaching. And so he did that. And so it's all really, really paying off. I think another thing that people forget about that 10 and 13 stretch, we were down for most of that time, or certainly significant portions of that time. We're talking like 23 games is like 2 months of games, right? Almost, right? So during that time, it's like Jackson Hayes missed a ton of time. AD missed a couple games. We
Mhm.
didn't have DFS yet. Rui was in and out of the lineup with random injuries and illnesses. There were legitimately games where our front court rotation was AD, Christian Coloco, and LeBron. Those were like our only guys 6'8" and taller who were suited up to play. Um, that's obviously going to lead to some problems. And I think, we were having defensive problems before that, but I think that did not help in terms of this team sort of establishing its identity. I think everything very kind of quickly cascaded after that. We did the D'Lo trade where we swapped a 6'3" guy for a 6'8" guy with length and strength. Um, we got Rui back healthy. We got Jackson Hayes back healthy. Uh, Vanderbilt came back from injury. All of these things sort of coalesced. And I think, like, and you've said this a lot, but we have certain role players on this team that they have the ability, but they need to they're not going to be the ones that initiate the energy. They sort of
Mhm.
have to like feed off others. And I think Rui is a really good example of that. Like, I'm not saying that, and this is not a problem, by the way, right? But you throw Rui out with a bunch of G League guys, he's not going to like all of a sudden be like, okay, I have to be Draymond Green now and be the team leader on defense. But you put him around a team of Draymond Greens and he himself like really elevates his defense and rebounding to a different level and
Yeah.
physicality. Um, and so that has resulted in this system where it's like now we actually have like 4 6'8" ish forwards, all with length and all with strength, who really just like impose their will on opponents. And this was what we were trying to build. It's like unfortunate. I mean, I will say this: I don't think Darvin Ham could have gotten this out of this group. But this is what we were sort of waiting on last year when we were sort of saying like, well, we need we're missing Vando. We're missing Vando. We're missing Vando. It's like,
We're
it's not,
missing Wood.
yeah, it's not. And this season we were missing Wood and for parts of last season too, but it's not like, one of those guys makes a difference in and of himself, but it's more that having that one guy for the extra depth sort of changes the whole dynamic of how everybody around him works. I mean,
Mhm.
Vanderbilt coming in and getting 6, 7 rebounds and like 14 minutes a game, 15 minutes a game has completely changed the dynamics for our rebounding. I mean, we were like the
Yeah.
worst rebounding team in the league. And now all of a sudden you get this guy who, you know, is not only going to muck things up on defense for get teams out of their offense, but also is going to aggressively crash the glass. And so when he's doing that, then it's like DFS is encouraged to go in there and aggressively crash the glass, and Rui is also, and LeBron's also,
Dude,
and so
did you see Rui last night? He was like smacking the hell out of the ball every rebound he got. I was like, "What are you doing, dude?" He's like, could
yeah,
hear like the audible smack of the ball. He's like, "I got it." So yeah, just to your point about the infectious nature, trickle down nature of, this the defensive intensity, but also a lot of this is coming from LeBron James's amped up energy, whether that's because of Luka, whether that's because he lost his best friend in Anthony Davis, or whether that's because it's just that time of the year. It's time for
yeah,
him to turn things
yeah.
up a little bit earlier than usual before the All-Star break. But you got to give credit to a lot of these guys for kind of just really buying into their roles. And a lot of this kind of sorted itself out, right? It just feels like everybody is more comfortable in knowing just how many minutes they're going to get, who they're going to be playing with, and how they fit into the larger scheme and system. And then you get a guy like Jordan Goodwin coming out of nowhere. I mean, he's been playing with South Bay, but like to get a 6'4", I mean, we pretty much got bargain bin Bruce Brown, dude. This guy had like 9 rebounds last night or something, and he's like crashing the glass and like diving on the floor just as, frantically as Jared Vanderbilt. And very quickly you begin to see which players shouldn't be playing at all, because everybody else is doing it. And so, yeah, it's been a joy to watch this Lakers team amidst all of the changes just continue to coalesce and win. We shall see what happens on the other side of the All-Star break and even just tomorrow when we have to face, higher caliber teams and our defense is really put to the test, et cetera, et cetera. But so far, I think this Lakers team has culled up a lot of goodwill and chemistry with one another that I think should help them, stem the tide even once we hit another rough stretch. Really quickly, Tommy, before we end this show, big news came out this past Saturday. The Lakers have not given us a break these past 2 weekends in terms of shocking news. The Lakers don't have Mark Williams anymore, but
Oh,
they do have Alex Len.
ah.
Len Sanity. I don't know what's going on. So really quickly, what are your thoughts on the Lakers rescinding the Mark Williams trade? I will say this is what I was worried about when we did our post reaction podcast on him. I did not think that it would get to this extent where we would rescind the trade. So, first, tell me how you feel about not having a starting center in Mark Williams after the fact. And then, second, what are your thoughts on the conspiracy theory from Charlotte Hornets fans and that the Lakers just got cold feet and they are trying to make something up with further medicals just so that they can back out of it because they realized that they may have gotten fleeced?
So the latter is ridiculous for reasons I'll say I'll get to in a moment. But I was of the camp that you overpay for a guy like Mark Williams if you have to, just because of the context of the league currently. I mean, I won't go through every option. We could do a whole pod on this, but the all-star type big men are not being traded. I mean, you could pull the list yourself. None of those guys are being traded. You start looking at young big men with promise. I'm talking about like 25 and under. None of those guys are being traded if they're good. We called about Kessler, we called about Duran. Neither of those guys are moving. You get Mark Williams. Is he the guy you necessarily would go to as option one? No, because if you were, you would have you would have called Charlotte about him when you were calling Utah about Kessler and Detroit about Duran. But that said, given multiple factors, and most importantly the one that his salary was 4 million this year, controlled for the next couple years, and so you didn't have to send out like a current core rotation player who we've been developing for the last couple years in order to get Williams. All of those factors for me made it worth an overpay in this scenario. However, the
Sorry, before
overpay.
you go though, like, but didn't and we had this back and forth back then where I was like, but doesn't it raise a brow for you that yes, usually these types of young centers aren't made available, even if you add in like the injury concerns, right? I was like, it feels like a red flag that this type of center, if he is this good, that Charlotte would be so openly willing to let him go.
But they weren't, right? So here's my point on that. If he had no red flags, we wouldn't have been able to get him. We obviously were getting him for one first round pick in Dalton, which was a package that would have been rejected for any of those other guys I just listed.
But I think we overpaid, and Charlotte was like, "Oh shit, don't tell anyone. Rob's willing to give up this, this, and this. We can't
Yeah,
say
yeah,
no to
yeah,
this
but
shit,
that's
and this
not
guy's
how
injured."
teams do it, right? So this is the thing, right? When you get into the let me just get out my thoughts. So if Mark Williams had no red flags, we wouldn't have been able to get him because Mark Williams with no red flags is in that same caliber of Kessler and Duran and any of these other guys who we would have had our offer rejected for, right? So you accept the red flags, however, you accept the known red flags. And I think the issue here is we knew about the back and we knew about the prior foot injury. According to all of the reports that have any credibility that I've seen, there were, including some from the Hornets side, right? There were multiple other issues. Now, now moving into the conspiracy part of this, right? And just sorry to close my thought on that, on the Mark Williams point, all of what I just said was an acceptable risk to me, predicated on the notion that the red flags were what we thought they were. If there were
Mhm.
additional red flags, that changes the calculus, obviously. And so I think that's what happened here, right? It's like I think we were willing to accept the known red flags. We had access to his medical information that was disclosed, right? And this is something that we've talked about before on this podcast, but signing up for the NBA doesn't like mean all of a sudden you're, not subject to HIPAA anymore. Like you can get access to whatever the other side is willing to disclose. Obviously, when trades are being negotiated, they can't have Mark Williams go take a physical and just be like, well, somebody might want this, shrug. You know what I mean? Like obviously it's like things are secretive, things move fast. And so you're disclosing paperwork before the trade is actually consummated. Based on that,
Before
before the trade is consummated, because that the trade is pending all of these other
mhm,
things. So when the trade was, I'll call it quote unquote, signed and agreed and announced, we had access to paperwork that our team doctors were apparently very well respected in the NBA got comfortable with. What then happened, right, is the trade is conditioned on physicals. And apparently in the physicals, there were multiple other issues that were not previously disclosed. And so you can frame that however you want. Oh, it's a conspiracy. Oh, they got cold feet. The reason that this is so rare that a trade gets rescinded, right, is because there are recourse angles for both teams, right? It's like if one team wants to back out, it's not like you could just throw your hands up and say like, well, I see a back strain on this physical, like I throw my hands up and say I rescind. That would happen so much more often. It happens so rarely because teams generally fully disclose everything before you get
mhm,
to the point of the physical is just supposed to be like a formality. And so in this case, right, when we're not talking about like, oh, well, they did a physical and actually the back was worse than what it was. It it is other undisclosed issues. And if you look at Hornets boards, there's a lot of people who say, at least I saw this on Reddit, right? Who knows what is actually the truth? We'll never know, probably. But there are folks on Hornets boards who say like, oh, like I heard from rumor from so and so that Mark Williams, they disclosed his foot injuries, but what they did not disclose was he actually has multiple hairline fractures in his foot. He's been playing through the
ugh,
injuries and effectively he's got like Bill Walton feet. This is not
ugh,
just how this was framed to the Lakers originally, which is you're accepting this risk of a guy who has a history of having a foot injury. It's actually something much more than what they said. We didn't know he was playing through current foot injuries, and it was sort of explained as like, oh, he's ramping back up, not he actively currently has injuries, and this is not just a you read the reports from Rob, it's like our medical staff read these reports and they're like, well, growing pains. Guys like, go through these growth spurts and this guy's 7'2", and there isn't a 7'2" guy in the world that doesn't have some amount of these types of issues crop up as they're still growing. And those were the known risks, right? When you introduce all these other things, it becomes something different. And I think that's like the ridiculous notion about all of this from my perspective. And by the way, like the indications today from Bobby Marks and others is that there's a 99.99% chance that
Yeah.
the trade's not going to, get overturned by the league, or rescinding is not going to get overturned by the league, is because it's, again, these conditions to close the trade are not just like loosey goosey. One side can put their hand up and say like, sorry, conditions not met. Like these, it's a high standard to say that, the conditions which are read to the league on the trade call, you know what I mean? Like they have to tell the league, we're doing this trade based on these conditions. Like you can't just then turn around and say like make up a reason for why you don't want to do it. We
Yeah.
literally announced this dude as our starting center. We announced him as like, we got this guy because of Luka. This was days after the trade was announced on Saturday, whatever the night was that or sorry, the morning of the dead. I can't remember if it was the night before the deadline or the morning of the deadline, but whenever, 2 days after that, we were saying that this guy is our center. So we wanted him. I just think we wanted him under the conditions that we were willing to accept risk
Yeah.
for, which were not what ended up being the reality.
And the repercussions of all of this have been so messy that you know that it had to have been something serious for us to like jeopardize, our relationship with Dalton Connect, who's kind of going through it, understandably so. And then even Mark Williams, like poor kid, right? He's being thrust into all of this, and like Hornets fans are like, why aren't they disclosing the specifics of the second study that they did? And it's like, I don't know, maybe we're trying to save Mark Williams' career, like make sure that
Yeah,
he has a chance. So
exactly. Well, and on that point too, right? Like the reports from Hornets again, I'm just going off of like I don't follow Hornets beat writers, but like if you look at the Hornets subreddit, it's like, people talking about the fact that the part of the reason their Hornets tried to raise all this stuff now after they put out a statement being like we welcome him back is because Mark Williams doesn't want to go back. So now they're screwed because they don't have Dalton and Mark Williams doesn't want to come back because of how they handled the situation. So, they're looking for like they're grasping at straws here. And I don't even know
yeah,
what happened with their Martin and Nurkic swap because apparently the Martin
I think he's there.
oh, is he actually there and it's confirmed?
He's there.
Because the
Mhm.
the that's like another thing that happened with the other Martin. I forget which one plays on Charlotte, but
Cody.
the one that got traded to Dallas, Caleb, I guess.
No, Cody.
No, no,
Caleb's on. Oh wait, Caleb's in Dallas and
yeah.
Cody is in Phoenix.
So Caleb, that trade at the last minute had to be amended and they had to throw in an extra second pick because apparently Caleb had medical issues that were undisclosed.
Cody, it's Cody. But yeah, it's the
Whichever one
twins.
ended
Yeah,
up
yeah,
in
yeah.
Dallas. I don't care what his name is.
No, no,
So,
no. It's the one that ended up in Phoenix. Actually, Caleb also has issue. Oh,
no,
okay.
that's what
No,
I'm talking about.
now.
The
Yeah,
one who
okay.
ended up in Dallas, that trade had to be amended to include an
The
extra
Sixers
pick
had to
because,
add.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
he had undisclosed medical issues. And so apparently his brother also had undisclosed medical issues. And so, it's like, you get to this point where the Charlotte, obviously, front office is going to try to save face in all of this, but you can't imagine a world where if they have two, and apparently their second one's not rescinded, but for a while it looked like they might have two trades rescinded at the same deadline, and no one is going to deal with you again after that. So, again, teams
Yeah.
could throw up their hands and say conspiracy this, conspiracy that. I think it was very clear from all the optics that the Lakers wanted Mark Williams. JJ Redick said, like, yeah, he's going to play on Sunday or what, Saturday, whatever. Like, and so, the conspiracy stuff is all just kind of nonsense to me. And it
If
also feels like, by the way, grasping at straws because them saying like we're going to go to the league to pursue other avenues, that was like 2 days after the trade was rescinded. It's like your first call should have been to the league. You probably already did call the league and they told
well,
you,
they
sorry.
already they already sent that press release out though that they're welcoming Mark Williams back. So there was like a rift in the relationship there where Mark was like, "Well, I don't want to come back." So they're like, "All right,
Yeah.
well." Anyways, I think we're getting like we're talking too much about the specifics of this deal, and what I really want to ask you is, are you okay with not having Mark Williams, and where does that sort of put your thought process of like what we can be, who we can be, the rest of this season with Jackson Hayes as our starting center, or maybe even Alex Len as our starting center. I will say for me, even if it sort of cuts us short this year a little bit, and I still think we can do something special, but it's obviously not as definitive. I can't say that with more definitiveness if we had like a legitimate starting center if he was healthy in Mark Williams. But I will say for our long term future, I was relieved that this trade did not go through because, as you guys already know, I thought it was an overpay back then. And outside of the red flags with regards to Mark Williams' injury history, but also his lack of defense, I saw it as huge red flags that this fan base, the Charlotte Hornets fan base, was so happy to get off of this guy. And even after the fact, you want to talk about conspiracy theories. If there's a conspiracy theory, it's the fact that the Charlotte Hornets didn't disclose stuff because this fan base is so desperate to get off of this dude. Even before all of the extra stuff that came out, right? So for me, I'm like, okay, I feel like we gave ourselves another shot at doing this over with more of a sure thing. Because for me, the overpay wasn't worth it for all of the red flags that were already present. That's just my opinion. You add on top of it this thing, and I'm like, oh my God, this could have been disastrous. Now, we're in a tricky situation with Dalton Connect, who's like, I'm probably going to get traded again this summer. But having said that, we at least have the assets back and we can get a healthier player. But with regards to the rest of this season, it's going to be patchwork quilt, kind of glue things together with duct tape. But yeah, where do you stand on, like, are you okay with how, like, not having a starting center?
Um, yeah, so I think it sort of caps our upside for this year because Mark Williams apparently hurt is still putting up 38, 14. And like, I'm not saying he was going to do that here, but having a 7-2 guy, even if he's playing through injury, like it was more than what we currently had, right? So that would have been helpful. And again, not talking about the most ideal use of the assets, just focusing on output for this year. Dalton with the new lineup, you're talking about a guy who's probably 10th in the rotation. If we want to play two centers, which I think we do, even if one is only playing a few minutes, like JJ said multiple times, we want a 9-man rotation. I think, as a 10th man, Dalton basically is taking those minutes that are currently going to Shake Milton. And I'm currently meaning like with a fully healthy Luka, Austin, and Gabe. Um, so Dalton is getting scraps. So from that perspective, and he might not play at all in the playoffs, if depending on how the rotations pan out. So from that perspective, like I think we cap our upside a little bit this year. But yeah, to your point, I mean, the 2031 first and Dalton are like two of our final few remaining assets. I think the problem comes when you actually start looking at the numbers and who we might be able to get. We, in some ways, are going to have to pay more, I think, to get a player that can be a starting center for us. Maybe you do that if you get more health certainty and you get a guy like Nick Claxton, who's still pretty young on a favorable contract that has a descending salary structure and doesn't interfere with,
Mhm.
the sort of 2027 plans. Uh, if you look at our cap books, it seems like we're sort of angling towards 2026 or 2027 to have a pretty clean salary sheet other than Luka to maybe add another star when LeBron retires. So, Claxton is one name that comes out, but it's like you look at the list, it's pretty bleak. So, that all that said though, right? It's like it doesn't necessarily have to be the case that we're getting all-star center in exchange for some sort of Dalton Connect in 2031 draft pick package. There could be a number of other moves. We could continue to move guys who are like sort of on the edge of the rotation around. Maybe we even end up trading Austin for like an all-star caliber center. I don't know, right? But
Before he's up for extension too. So
right. So there's a number of ways that it could go, and so it makes it sort of hard to sort of think about. But it is obviously it's nice to have the assets back and it'll be another tool to use this season, the summer with the other tools that we've already sort of discussed, meaning like the $40 million of expiring salary, you add to that a 2031 first, we're going to have a 2032 second. Um, we're going to have Dalton, who's on a very favorable deal. And so we're going to have the ability to do something. It might not even be for a center, it might be for another player. And then we add a
Mhm.
center, who's like a project, minimum guy like Jackson Hayes, who we try to develop over the course of the year.
Yeah,
And
we're gonna get Herb Jones once he's healthy.
right, right, right.
Maybe right. So here's the thing, though, and I because we traded for Luka Doncic, obviously you commend Rob Pelinka for having the right thought process of being like, hey, let's try and win now with a Mark Williams type player who's young enough that you could also extend this out. Now we see, okay, good thought process, wrong player to do that with, but we get a redo, we get a reset. And specifically because we traded for Luka Doncic, we are not necessarily beholden. It's preferred that you always think win now, but we are not no longer beholden to that thought process because Luka Doncic has extended our window while at the same time us making sure that we're cognizant of the fact that Luka's a win now player as well and we have to do everything within our power to get him the team that he needs. But given that we have 2 months left in the season, I think Luka will be understanding, of whatever we have to do just to get through the finish line of this year. And so I think the other added benefit of all this is the fact that we will just get more intel on the type of team we're trying to construct here. What even is this? Right now, are we really a 9-1 team for the rest of the season? I don't think so, but who knows what we could like the roster construction blueprint and vision for this team. What will it look like by season's end? We'll have a clearer picture and we won't have to hastily rush into Mark Williams. Here are all of our assets. We've got no other wiggle room to do anything else. Now we do. And so there's the silver lining for all of that. And I think it's more than a silver lining. But with that said, yeah, I mean, the Lakers are rolling. We're going to head into All-Star weekend. Hopefully nobody gets injured tomorrow, whoever does play. And we'll get to see more Luka magic meshing and gelling with the lot of these role players who are really playing their best basketball in their roles that they ever have in, I don't know, their times with the Lakers, but especially with JJ Redick. So exciting times ahead. With that said, we will catch you guys next time. Follow us on Twitter at Lakers Legacy Pod. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a 5-star rating and review on the Apple Podcast app and Spotify. It really helps out a lot. And yeah, with that said, Tommy, Lensanity, baby. We're here. Hopefully he plays against the Utah Jazz tomorrow. I don't know. Anyways, I will catch you later.
Peace.
See ya.